before we even start the podcast, talk me through what's behind you. Did I see a plastic crotch?
Yeah. You can do plastic groin and upper thighs. I suppose, in isolation, it looks a bit like something you might hang on a door to entertain yourself with. But it's a mannequin.
Right. Okay.
The torso, which happens to have a shawl that was drying on it. But I normally use it for photographing t-shirts and stuff.
Right. If anyone is just, which most of the time it is, if anyone listening to just the audio podcast, they're going to be like why are they talking about a plastic crotch?
They're gonna think I'm sort of being filmed in a sex dungeon or something.
Eventually, that's where I want the podcast to reach. I just want to get lower and lower, and eventually to be in the dungeon. I don't want to be doing any sort of sex things in the dungeon, but maybe just being there interviewing them would be quite nice.
Yeah,
that could be good.
It'll add a certain something.
I don't know what, but yeah. So we normally do like introductions, and obviously we know each other, but for people who aren't listening, who are you?
I am Robert Vaughan. I live in Belfast. I'm from South London. I'm involved in live improv comedy and I guess unlive internet comedy.
All pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Pre-recorded tweets.
Well, I think I actually think through the tweets, unlike the things that come out of my mouth when we're doing improv together.
It's quite it's totally two different things. What made you decide to go into improv? Had you ever done it before?
No, I haven't. The main reason was because I'd moved to a new city, and me and my wife had a child, so I couldn't just tag along with her to build a social life. So I had to actually do something about it myself. I did like the idea of doing improv comedy. I don't know why it taken me so long to get around to it, but yeah, the main reason was rebuilding my social life.
And then it was all torn apart last year.
Yeah. I guess it's quite bad timing. As opposed to all those good timings for on a personal level, the pandemic was bad because I remembered I had you get sudden strong memories of things you haven't thought about for years.
Yeah.
I remembered the third series of Big Brother in 2002 when they showed like the audition tape of one of the guys who was a model, very good-looking guy from Essex called Alex, and he said like, "Oh, I got my big break in modelling. I was going to go on a billboard campaign, but then, of course, 9/11 happened."
What?
And I think, I mean, it's obvious. I know what he meant. It was kind of bad luck for him, but the way he was. It coupled with this sort of whiny Essex accent just made it like so funny, so petty.
I mean,
so basically, coronavirus was bad because it stopped us doing improv every couple of weeks, improv shows every couple of weeks, plus something.
Just going back to Alex from Big Brother, that's one of the worst excuses I've ever heard. Like, there's some people genuinely have, like people who maybe. Because didn't they cancel the World Cup during World War II?
Mm.
That's a decent excuse. You can be like, sorry, we didn't win the World Cup because, Hitler. But like, you can't blame Osama bin Laden for not appearing on a billboard.
I'm not sure if he didn't appear on the billboard or if the billboards went up anyway,
Was
but
the bill was the
everyone was
billboard
too like freaked out by 9/11 to go and buy whatever he was advertising.
was the billboard on one of the towers?
See, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
Maybe they just put the first strip up.
It was on the other side that they weren't filming as well. So
Maybe they just put the first strip up, so it wasn't actually his face. So yeah, going back to that. So we obviously you are in, what would you say, comedy, improv, actor, improviser.
I don't think I'm an actor because I don't think I'm very good at acting. I think I'm a bit like a sort of, like Arnold Schwarzenegger basically plays the same role. I feel like I'm a very scrawny English version of that.
You're the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the local improv scene. That's quite a statement. I love it. I love it.
And then it's heavily caveated. Yeah, that's what I am.
Fantastic. So if we get into, so you've been doing improv comedy, but going on to the other side, which is always something that whenever I try to explain it to people, they're like, I don't get it. So can we talk about, can we go into this? We can talk about this? Yeah. Yeah. So you run a football team.
Yeah.
But the football team doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't exist.
And tell me how that came about.
I don't know. I guess you have to go back to when I was a child. When I got into football, I was kind of irritated that my hometown didn't have a football team.
Right.
Some neighbourhoods in London have football teams. It's one of the interesting things about football in London is there's no London FC or London City or whatever.
Yeah.
Every team's named after a neighbourhood. And so I was kind of a bit miffed that Stratton didn't have one. And then sort of fast forward 25 years or whatever, I ended up making a Twitter account for a fictional, like non-league, small football team. Partly, I guess, like because I'd gone to a lot of non-league football in London, and I kind of a lot of it was ripe for comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the stuff I use, I don't even sort of really add anything to it. It's literally just things that I've seen happen in non-league football. And yeah, so I just started that way. And it kind of, I think it's not, I'm about to say it grew beyond all recognition. But it's still moderately sized, still pretty niche.
Yeah.
It's like more successful and like, vaguely marketable than I could ever have conceived of it being.
Like you would say it, but I think the best way to describe it is it does have a cult following.
Yeah.
Like there's some diehard supporters, I would say.
Yeah. There's some people. There's people who collect the stuff. There's like collectors. There's one guy he collects stuff for various football clubs, plus Streatham Rovers, plus the London teams. It's just always interesting. There's people who like play along and engage with the tweets and the Facebook stuff, and
and there's been times though in the past, and especially because it's reached the press before, where people have genuinely thought it's real. So tell me about those times.
Yeah, I didn't really expect that to happen because I mean, some people use social media to explicitly to trick people. I never really thought that would happen. I thought it was too easily sort of Googleable to realize it wasn't real. But people have fallen for it quite a lot. And there's been a few things where like I've had like journalists. Like I got a direct message from a BBC journalist who was concerned about the safety of a child that I in hiding after a bad reaction to the away kit they won a competition to design. They had to be in hiding for their own safety. And like a sort of local London BBC journalist had sort of believed all this and was fervently sending me DMs asking for more information.
Did you give a statement?
I said we can't give you any information in case you're going to kill this child. It is funny. Like there's a kind of moral ambiguity about convincing people that a child's going to be killed, but it is very funny. It is very funny.
The death of a fictional child, yeah, it's always hilarious.
I mean, I can think of worse children to die than fictional ones.
Oh, real ones, I would say.
I would never, ever, no matter how funny it was, I would never kill a real child in the name of comedy.
But there's a lot that you would do for comedy, like myself. We have our there is a line and
kill. Like about the sort of maiming level.
Yeah, would you punch a child for comedy? Like, would you hit a child with your car at 10 miles an hour?
And then speed up the footage.
Yeah. But the child is also moving at the same time, so it's actually only about 3 miles an hour.
Oh, yeah. He's being pushed on a skateboard.
Yeah. Let's not do that, and let's not use this as a clip.
But improv, because you can't get a child and a car together at that short a notice.
Oh, it's difficult.
Our images are difficult to realise. Yeah, so people falling for it, and there's the biggest example was when it ended up being used as a real news story on Have I Got News for You?
Oh yes,
which was quite extreme because that's a program with lots of fact checking because because Ian Hislop is on it and he's like, well, I think he's now the former editor, but he used to be the editor of Private Eye, which is sued publication in the UK. So a lot of very rich, powerful people wanted to get Private Eye. So like they've always had to be very, very careful. And it just managed to slip through, amazingly.
When did you find that out? Were you just watching it one night and then it appeared, or did someone tell you?
I knew it might come on because they'd asked me posing as like this, fictional non-league football club committee member to like digitally sign a release form for the image they were going to use.
Right. Okay.
I did that. Signed whatever fake name it was, and so I was aware it might be on, but I thought there's no way because I'd heard how cautious they were, and so I didn't bother watching it. I was just I was actually putting our child to bed, and then my wife came up and said, "Oh my God, Twitter's going crazy. You've been featured on."
Yeah. That's amazing. So obviously you post tweets like updates about the football club, things that have happened. But one of my favorite things about it are the names of the players and the coaches. Mm-hmm. So what would you say your favorite names are? Because I have a couple of mine.
I think there's Boutros Florida.
Right.
I sometimes call Florida because there's this idea that one name is for when he's in a defensive position, and the other name is when he's in an attacking position because he's a versatile player. And the manager's sort of feeble attempts at sort of being a sort of psychological master. He's just tried to convince him to have two different names.
Right.
So that's one of them. There's a substitute player called Wolfgang LaRouge. It was the name of my first ever
girlfriend.
My first ever Dungeons and Dragons character.
Right. Okay.
So I like little things like that, little Easter eggs exclusively for me.
Yeah, but not anymore.
Not anymore. And another name.
I've got the your program here in
Oh
front
yeah.
of me. Um, so I'm just going to read a couple out if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
Hoddle Goose.
Little Goose, son of the manager, Taff Goose.
Right, is that his son?
Yeah.
Right.
All his children are named after footballers. He's got Costa Curta Goose, um, Wea Goose, and the daughter is called Roberta Baggio Goose.
Fantastic. This is probably my favorite though, and I don't know why, but it's one of the opposition team names, and it's Cromwell Beaver. Like you're laughing, but you came up with that.
I actually forgotten it. Well, Beaver. Yeah, that's perfectly plausible name.
I've heard of Cromwell, yeah, like as in Oliver. I've never heard it as a first name, followed by Beaver, which is fantastic. I do. I love this, and I would. Are you still selling these?
Yeah, there's some left.
Well,
There's as the baby sleeps on a cot made of them. There's a few left.
no, I would highly recommend it because the amount of effort you've gone into doing these programs is like ridiculous. But they are fantastic, and if people are looking to, I'll obviously share links and stuff. But if people could look for Streatham Rovers online, you will find all of this, and it's great. And there's your face on the front of it for anyone who's watching the video podcast. No, it's fantastic. I genuinely think, as I say, it's something whenever I tell people, like if I'm out with you guys and I say, oh yeah, Rob runs a fictional football team, everyone's just like, what?
It's difficult to explain. It's I kind of like accidentally invented something, I suppose.
Yeah,
I the concept of fictional football teams, but there's all doing it online and stuff.
No, it's fantastic. Like I love it and I follow it, and I think it's one of those things that I would follow anyway. If I heard of it, I would be like, yeah, I need to follow this. But we'll go back to basically the last year. So we were doing improv quite a lot. Like we were probably performing at least once, if not twice a month for a while. And I would say
weekly rehearsals.
Oh yeah, rehearsals basically every week. We wouldn't have missed that many around that time. And going from that to then doing absolutely nothing really performance-wise. So it's a question that I always ask in the podcast, but what would you say has kept you sane throughout this time?
Well, I think like compared to a lot of people, it didn't hit as hard for me, just lockdown in general, because I mean we're parents, which restricts how much you can go out anyway, and we recently moved to a new city as well, so like we were kind of used to not going out for that reason as well. So
yeah,
I don't think it was quite the sledgehammer that it was for other people. Plus, like my wife kept her job, which a lot of people didn't, and was able to work from home, and so things became a bit easier in that way.
Yeah, and
it wasn't too difficult.
Yeah, so nothing really in terms of, it was really just probably going from performing all the time to not performing, so it was just a bit of a change. But in terms of your home life, nothing was really affected too much.
I remember it being weird. I remember like the first lockdown, it felt a lot more like a bigger event to go out to do the shopping and stuff once a week.
Yeah, it's quite scary at the start, I would say.
Yeah, I think like everyone thought it was worse than perhaps it was, if I can say that without like deeply offending.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it was like I remember at one stage actually having one of the little hand sanitizers in my room and like basically sanitizing my hands like several times, and it's like this doesn't need to happen, but it's just that it sort of created that sort of paranoia where you feel like you have to like constantly be sanitized. And yes, if you're out and about, then fair enough, yeah, I have to sanitize. But if I'm sitting in my bedroom for a week, I don't really need to sanitize all the time.
Yeah, it was weird, and it did feel a bit apocalyptic going out. Only in a small way, but still like in a way that most people in a place like this haven't necessarily experienced.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, it was very weird. It felt a lot more normal. It felt a lot more normal after the subject. I don't know. Are we on two? Was it 2 or 3 lockdowns? I can't actually remember.
I don't know. I thought it was either 3 or 4.
Was it 3 or 4? I've completely lost track.
Or maybe it was 3, I'm not sure.
But yeah, the first one did feel a lot worse, and it felt strange for that reason. But we were lucky because we were able to meet up to practice in between lockdowns because we were going to do the live internet shows.
Yeah, which I think helped to sort of broke it up. I think because we
Live
all,
shows lacked a lot of things, but
it was
it enabled us
strange.
to practice and stuff, and like we kind of became by default the best improv group in Belfast.
Yeah,
Doing it, which is like
we were for that week. Yeah,
like if only one team entered the European Championships or something.
yeah.
But yeah, it's still good.
We were basically the
Avoided.
we were the Vladimir Putin of improv groups.
Yeah.
Like we were all.
Everyone else either imprisoned or poisoned.
They can't prove it. But if we bring it to so the podcast is one part having a laugh, and obviously because we know each other, it's hard not to just sit and have a laugh the whole time. But if we take it to the sort of mental health side of it, in terms of comedy and performing, how would you say it helps or even hinders your mental health?
I don't think it hinders it at all. I think it's very healthy for me. I think any sort of like any sort of showing off has been beneficial to me because I was an incredibly shy child. I was like almost silent throughout most of primary school, and like,
Not really.
I didn't even speak like proper English until I was about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I spoke a made up language.
Right.
And, I had like quite a few speech impediments and stuff
Yeah.
as well. And like I was so shy as a result that I kind of realised when I was about 11 or so that if I didn't force myself occasionally out of the shell, I would never enjoy life.
That's quite a young age though to stumble upon that.
I think if I'd been slightly less shy and not realised that until I was like 25,
Yeah.
it would have been too late. I was able to learn the social skill of like just doing outlandish things occasionally just to feel something, which, you know, maybe I should have been able to have done normally through a everyday conversation, but
Yeah.
I didn't seem to work like that as a kid. And so like I think and improv's like a more structured version of that rather than just sort of creating a scene in a pub or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's one of the things that I love about it. Like I think it's probably the one thing that sort of pushes my creativity. And I think it's the one thing where like with like obviously I do stand up as well, but with stand up I feel like it's a lot I feel like it can be almost harder to be funny. Like it takes obviously you're having to spend it's more of a craft, I would say, with stand up, whereas with improv I think it's probably the most fun I've ever had like in my life. It's literally just to feel like you're just playing with your friends.
I'd like to give stand up a try, but I can imagine it being more stressful than improv.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think doing it alone and sort of knowing what you're going to say by and large will kind of give you time to begin to doubt it.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously you don't have that opportunity.
No.
Improv because it's in and out of your mouth.
like immediately you just have to then kind of justify it, and that's what I love about it as well. If you say something and it just comes out, then you're basically challenged to justify it, and that's normally just why it is so funny, because it can be absolute nonsense. Like if we move on to improv, then what? Just thinking back to sort of all your performances, like, and we've done many. Are there any sort of standout characters that you've played, or what are the sort of standout scenes that you've done in the past? Just to sort of explain how mad it is.
I'm not very good at remembering it in too much detail. What have I done that I've? What have I done?
What if and I'm the same. I struggle sometimes to kind of pinpoint those, because we've done so many as well, and you'll do a practice and you're maybe
I
doing.
remember the first show's stuff very well. Not that it was necessarily especially good, but sometimes I remember the things you do in practice more. I remember me and someone else, we were in a car factory,
Right.
and I went into some sort of long monologue about how the factory had been completely changed by automation. And it was all pretty deadpan, but it was the rest of the group were laughing at it, and then I sort of slowly shifted it towards how I'd seen a man's head ripped off by one of the the car factory line robot things.
It's
I
things
don't know, all in a sort of droll northern accent like that as well, which
that's what I love about it, is you have that just pure. There's nothing else that gives you that sort of creative freedom to literally do whatever you want.
yeah, I'd never sit down and think what I want to do is pretend to be an old northern man, sort of regretting the automation of the car factory, partly because it ripped someone's head off. I wouldn't sit down and write that. It'd just come.
No, but it's genuinely one of my favorite things to do, and I think there was maybe 3 or 4 weeks in a row during rehearsals where I was literally crying, laughing. There's been a couple where I think there was one where we were it was during the lockdown, I think, or whenever we could start rehearsing again, where we did some sort of scene together. And I don't even remember it entirely, but it was something to do with a woman being crushed to death by was it a printer?
Was it an X-ray machine?
Yeah, that's what it was. An X-ray machine.
Yeah, that's why your character was scared.
Yeah, I was scared because she had been. Yeah,
your mother had been crushed,
and then turned into a slug. Yeah. It's so strange, and anyone listening must be thinking, what is this? But I would recommend to come and watch us, because we are very funny. So that's kind of what's kept you sane, and just sort of touched a little bit on mental health, in terms of, you would say that it helps you, because I think you have that, same as myself, it's that need for attention. That's why we do it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Because whenever I was younger, I was quite similar. I was very shy, I would say, up until probably even into my teenage years. I would say maybe even later than that. I would say it was probably my early 20s. Whenever I was like, right, I need to start throwing myself into things, and I think I got like a football bet up or something when I was like 20 or something like that, and just booked myself acting lessons. I was like, this is terrifying, but I'm gonna do it anyway, and did it. And then sort of started studying media, and behind the camera, in front of the camera. And then it was actually a tutor challenged me to do something that scares me. So I was like, right, okay. So things that scare me were going on the radio. That terrified me. Being on TV terrified me. But I always wanted to do it. So I hosted like 2 radio shows, which were horrendous. Probably some of the worst things I've ever done. Have you ever done anything on radio?
Yeah, I was shocked at how difficult I found it.
Yeah, I hated it.
I've done a couple of shows as guests, well, as one guest on
Yeah, not two people.
like local London radio, and the first one I actually did it as a character. So
Right.
the character was like sort of in the sort of the prequel trilogy of this Stratton Rovers story, and he he got invited on, and I went on thinking it'd be easy just to sort of act like I did in the little videos I made of this character.
Yeah.
This is all before I'd done any improv and stuff, so I had no inkling that that would actually be really bloody difficult, and I ended up sort of lasting as the character for about 30 seconds, and then just talking to myself for an interview, and I was like, oh, bums.
That's it's
And then
not.
the next time I did radio was me and some fans of my local non-league team who do exist in London, Dulwich Hamlet. We were invited onto a football show, and I was like, guys, I've been on the radio before, and it's actually surprisingly difficult. So one of the other fans brought a bottle of Buckfast. He was very unusual. He was not Scottish, not Irish, not Northern Irish, but he was into drinking Buckfast.
That's weird.
And so we all drank some of that lovely caffeinated fortified wine. That made me a lot more talkative than being completely sober would have done.
It will do that to you, but it will also do other things to you.
I beat up the host. It was. I'm just glad there wasn't any video.
And that's why Chris Moyles retired, isn't it? That's great. Okay, so we've had our slightly serious chat on the podcast. Let's move on to the fun part, which is the three things that I asked you to come up with.
Oh, yeah.
It's the segment of the show that doesn't have a name, but it's three things that drive you insane. And Robert Vaughan, what is number one?
Number one, let me remember these. Number one.
Did you not write them down?
I haven't written them down. Cost of food and drink in Belfast.
Cost of food and drink in Belfast.
Yeah.
As compared to what?
Compared to what I thought it would be, because I kind of thought like it would be like well, everyone goes on about how expensive London is. This is and compared to like Northern England.
Yeah.
And like Belfast is like Northern England plus, you know. It's like it's literally further north. It's to the side, and you know, lots of crap things happen. You know, which like make the closing of mines look like child's play. So, yeah, it's obviously going to be like threepence for a pint and stuff. It's not. It's
one gold coin.
It's apparently the fourth most expensive city to drink in the UK, after London, Oxford, and Cambridge.
Right. Okay.
And yeah, and I think I know why. It's not because in London, Oxford, and Cambridge, it's like obviously a lot of the cost of pints is in the cost of property for the pubs and stuff. You know, the rents and stuff are enormous.
Yeah, so they have to.
You don't have that problem in Northern Ireland, but I think it's a lack of competition, because obviously you've got quite sort of a puritanical influence, and it's very hard to get licenses. And I assume that's what's going on. And the food's expensive as well. I don't know why.
it's just one of those things.
I think I've got a reason for that as well. There's a theory. It's because a lot of the cheap places to eat in a place like London, they're not run by Northwest Europeans. They're run by and for migrant communities who are less inclined to rip each other off. But there's something about the Northwest European who just love ripping each other off.
Right. They're just happy
capitalism was born. So I think that might be it.
That could be it. And maybe if anyone listening to the podcast knows why or knows anything about Northwestern Europeans, then please,
If you're a food economist, get in touch.
please do. There'll be links somewhere to contact us. Okay, that's what's number two.
Number two is driving. Driving or drivers. I say this as I'm kind of being sort of forced to learn to drive. I haven't filled out the form yet. I sort of, that's my last sort of attempt to cling on to humanity. But yeah, they irritate me. They irritate me everywhere. They irritate me in London because it's so unnecessary, particularly in London. And it irritate me here because it's so necessary. You know, people. When I say I don't know how to drive, occasionally people will look at me like I've announced some sort of bizarre life decision. Like, oh, I've got 3 wives and I sleep with a dog, or something like that. So how can you not drive when you've got a family and stuff?
I know I'm the same. Like I don't drive either. And it's one of those things as well where, especially whenever I was dating, whenever I was on the dating scene, it was one of those things that I think I've always felt it was a bit of a turn off, that like a women won't be interested. And there was a couple of girls who just weren't interested because I didn't drive. And I understand it to a certain extent.
But they live in very remote areas.
No, that's the thing. Like we're not even gonna be driving anywhere anyway. But it's something that I do need. I think it's something I do need to do. It's something I will do. But I think I've been quite lucky.
The only thing that makes me want to learn to drive is because it will increase my employment options. Be able to do delivery work or something. Because I'm quite unqualified, really. So that tempts me, but
you'd also hate yourself if you were a driver.
Become a sort of driving from A to B.
Yeah.
I get wound up by cars. I do think cars have like completely screwed up cities.
They are the devil.
They're divided by these sort of huge pathways with like these child killing machines just
we can't say much. We literally had a child.
We were talking about killing children in an artistic way. For our own mental well-being, whereas
yeah, doing 70 down to 30 is quite slightly different to what we were talking about.
But yeah, so yeah, it'd be great to go back in time and not stop the invention of the car, but stop the sort of domination of it.
So what would you do? Like if you could go back in time and there was what would you like? If there was someone making a circle, would you just like hit them in the head with a rock, or?
Yeah, that's probably quite a good sort of thought experiment. Which historical figure or act of sabotage would you kill or commit to stop the domination of the automobile in 21st century Northwest European cities? I think the obvious one to go for might be Henry Ford. Henry Ford did some really very cheeky things. Like
did he not hate the Jews, or who was that?
I'm not sure, but I mean, it was fairly common around that time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But he brought up like train tracks and stopped using them, dismantled them and stuff to like encourage the mass market for his cars.
That's very cheeky. That's like moving next. I think was there not some celebrity or something who moved next door to a pub and the pub was too noisy, so they bought it and closed it.
It happens a lot in London. People knowingly move next to pubs and clubs and then complain about the noise, and they're allowed to do this, and the councils take it seriously. It's ridiculous.
That's pretty bad. Okay, then I'm going to pose the question to you then. So, other than stopping the invention of cars, what would you stop?
Something that I would stop historically.
Yeah, And
Uh,
I don't mean like serious like the obviously we would stop the Holocaust or we would stop 9/11, but something a little more flippant,
Something more flippant. Ooh.
like the invention of
Why not? I go for you know, like football clubs back in like the Victorian era. A lot of them had like different kit designs, and they were like a bit more unusual.
yeah.
Um, if I could go and kill whoever was going around selling these sort of more generic blue and red and white shirts.
I love how we're also killing these people as well, not just sabotaging them.
Not just saying, not just saying them down and explaining.
It's like we're not even going around and like, stealing their kits. We've just gone straight to murder.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I don't know.
Fantastic.
I've watched the Terminator too many times. I can't be expected to travel back in time and not kill someone.
Yeah.
I think like it was almost like some sort of muscle memory would kick in. This moment I could be sent back in time to meet Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, it's a bad day for you. Wouldn't be able to help myself.
No, that would be a strange one. Going.
I killed Christ 5 days before the Romans were there.
Say, put your hands up. They already are. That's terrible. Mom, if you're listening, I'm so sorry. Okay, so number 3. Before this gets even darker.
Number three. Yeah, okay. This is my slightly more serious one. Actually, no, the driver's one's serious as well. The whole of London being used as a shorthand for like the metropolitan elite, the rich, when it's actually got some of the highest rates of child poverty, particularly in inner London, in the whole of the UK, and when you live there, you see like very visible poverty. Even like children with like distended stomachs and stuff.
Oh, really?
And then for people to kind of use it as a sort of populist sort of like, oh, they're all rich there, and dismissing any sort of like left wing or liberal or progressive sort of idea that's associated with London for that reason, when it's actually quite inaccurate and there's plenty of authentic poor people in London. That really irritates me.
I think it's very hidden though, isn't it? Like if you talk to someone who, like myself, for example, I've never actually been to London, as in like the center of London or even close to it. But I never really imagined that. You sort of imagine London as, this like basically like an English New York sort of thing.
Yeah,
But that's obviously a very small part of it, from what I understand.
yeah, you get like sort of. I guess it's kind of like when you go on holiday and you kind of realize you haven't ventured off your small sort of McDonald's branded tourist map.
You have actually left the resort.
Yeah. So like, yeah, that's the center. Yeah, I mean, in a way, the center of London that is growing.
Yeah.
So, but if virtually no one lives there, you can't really judge what Londoners are like by imagining them living in places like the Square Mile or Westminster,
Yeah.
because a few very rich sort of people who probably live 6 months of the year in Saudi Arabia or whatever,
Mm.
who tend to be the ones who live right in the center.
And it's one of those things as well. Like London's very rife for people like buying expensive property as well, and not, as you say, not even living there. And I think it's a huge thing. I think they're trying to clamp down on, but
Some of the very rich will buy them up and not even bother renting them out.
yeah,
It's purely as a sort of backup if there other sort of interests in oil or mining or whatever around the world
yeah.
some sort of cataclysmic financial event, then they've got their unused, completely clean flats in bits of London that need some real flats which people can live in.
What was your so going from so that you didn't you weren't really London centre though? Did you live outside London? Did you, or is it?
I lived in inner London, which is like the first bit around the city centre. So like kind of like what you'd call, I guess, sort of old London before Greater London was the authority from the 1960s onwards. I lived in the sort of thing half the size of that.
Right. Okay.
In London.
And how did that? How would you say that compared? Because you when did you move to Belfast? A few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2018.
So about 3 years ago. And when? What?
I
How?
lived in Belfast for a year in 2000, 2001 when I first knew my wife, when we first went out with each other. And it was Belfast was a lot different then. So I think the contrast that has shocked me is the difference between Belfast 20 years ago and Belfast now.
Right. Okay.
Because it felt it felt a lot more like scarred back then. I know, sometimes people talk about the Good Friday Agreement was just a switch that changed everything overnight. I think sometimes English people assume that, but it was a gradual process. And,
Oh yeah.
All the police stations were still like something from like a post-apocalyptic movie, and
Oh god. Yeah.
kids were obviously kind of messed up after what had happened, and would like. I lived in North Belfast at the time, so I was kind of not quite realizing what I was doing. I was walking through interfaces just to walk into the city centre.
Yeah.
And these kids would assume I was coming from the other community and like just lob bricks at me. It was like daily lobbing of bricks at me. It was
That's meant that. That's insane. Like, and that's
really doesn't happen. Like when I go through North Belfast, part of me is always like, oh, where's the kids?
you're there with a bag of bricks, aren't you?
I'm preemptively throwing them back.
That's crazy. Like it's obviously I've always lived here, so you kind of always know growing up, you don't go here, you don't go there.
Yeah. I think also people from here who live in London or wherever, who then move back after quite a while, if only come over like Christmas or whatever, they're a bit surprised as well. Because like I used to like be sort of in London, having like lived there, I'd be sort of like the adopted sort of Belfast diaspora.
Yeah.
Talk with people at parties and stuff, and like all these people had like left like 15 or 20 or even longer ago.
Yeah.
Like the troubles are still going on.
No, it's
actually quite nice.
Yeah, no, it wasn't too bad at that stage. Like, but that's another question as well, because this is something that I've obviously never experienced. But as someone coming over from England and maybe living in Belfast, have you ever had any like sort of bad reactions just because you have an English accent?
A few times, like 20 years ago. But now, not at all. I think 20 years ago, I was probably the first English person without a gun that a lot of people come across. And so I had like a mix. I had some people with bad reactions, and some people just sort of like fascinated by like why the hell was I there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But now, like, I mean, like if I walk down a main street, particularly in some of the sort of like more fashionable ones, like the Ormer Road
yeah,
and stuff, you'll hear other English accents.
Oh yeah, nowadays it's a lot more often. Like even whenever I was at school, there was very few English accents. You would have got, maybe like one or two, and a lot of the time it was really just kids who were like their parents or their mom or dad were in the army, And that was the only reason why they were here. They didn't really choose to come over here as you did.
Yeah, yeah. Which seems like my friends and family, when I announced I was moving here in 2000, were like, "What the fuck are you doing?" They basically thought you get some machine guns as soon as you step off the plane. Um,
Plus, I'm
and
also imagining you as well actually announcing it, as in you get everyone together in the house in a very small kitchen, and then you just stand in the worktop and go, "I'm moving to Belfast."
I wish it had been like that. But like, by the time, like 2018 or just 2017, and the build up to it, like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's sensible. you're you're living in poverty because of the cost of rent in London. Yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
that's
So
mad.
completely different perceptions of it.
No, it's so strange, and it's something that I can't really get my head around because I've never experienced it. I've always lived in the kind of areas that have always been kind of mixed. So I've never, well, I say I spent a year in a let's just say, a state that was run by, as my mum would say, bad boys. But other than that, it's always been areas that have kind of just been mixed. So I've never really cared too much. I've never had any sort of really bad experiences. Although most people have had it a couple of times where I've like been on holiday and someone's heard my accent, and one guy just grabbed me, and his way of saying Catholic or Protestant was to grab me and go, "Rangers or Celtic, Rangers or Celtic."
Was he from here, or was he
Yeah, I
like?
think he's either from here. He was Scottish. I can't remember. It was a long time ago. And I can't remember what I said because I've never really supported either because they're both crap.
Yeah.
Because Scottish football is one of
What
the worst.
That's one of the big differences you notice here. Like loads, loads of people, especially kids, wore Rangers and
Yeah.
Celtic 20 years ago, and now like you go weeks without seeing one,
Oh,
and
it's not as often now. Like it's
see a
people have kind of.
lot more English tops. I know, like Liverpool and Manchester United do have a historic Protestant Catholic thing, and I think you can just about see a sort of pattern in terms of different parts of Belfast, but
Mm,
it's not like a major defining thing.
no, no,
Um,
definitely not.
and also, you see London clubs. Yeah, London clubs I couldn't be bothered to support, but people in Belfast, and also you see a lot of Gaelic football shirts, which
Yeah, you start to see more of that now. I think people are starting to kind of like Gaelic as well. Was like we had Vittorio Angeloni on one of the earlier podcasts. He was in the second podcast, I think, second or third, and he was part of East Belfast
oh,
GAA, which is
yeah,
which is fantastic. I think the fact that they like I know there was a threat of a bomb under a car, but like that was always going to happen.
yeah. No, it's interesting, and the badge is cool as well.
Yeah, that's one of the things I actually always considered doing.
I'd like to give both Gaelic football and hurling or camogie, whatever it's called.
Said like a true Englishman.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, I've never played rugby either. I'll give rugby a go as well, but I'd like to play it with like people of the same build as me.
I'd like to see you play them all at the same time. Just a load of rugby players, and you've just got a hurley stick.
It's one interesting thing. I have actually been to a Gaelic football match like 10 years ago when I was over with my wife visiting, and I went to Casement Park before it
Oh
was
yeah,
closed down for like the never-ending redevelopment. Um, and I couldn't even really work out who was winning until like about half time.
yeah. I think it might have been Victoria or someone, or is Darren Matthews, a local comedian's also part of the East Belfast GAA, but he posted like it was one of their latest results, and I don't know if they won or not.
Yeah, because I haven't actually watched any for a while. I've actually forgotten the scoring system.
No, I've literally no idea. But let's wrap it up. We're gonna ask you one final question, and it's pretty much the normal question that I ask people. So you've got your fictional football team, you've got your improv, which, well, we have the improv. How do you see the future? Do you have any set goals as such, or are you someone who kind of just sort of moves along?
Yeah, I don't have plans really. I should. I meant to be like writing a second like pilot script for a guy at a TV production company who's interested in a Streatham Rovers sitcom.
Right.
I've meant to have done that for like months. I am kind of devoid of what's the word when you really want things? Ambition.
Right.
Uh, yeah. I don't know. I kind of worry sometimes that I've reached an age where I can't come up with any new ideas.
I don't think, no, I don't, I think it's easy to kind of say that because whenever before I started doing stand up as well, I took a break of like 5 or 6 years. And whenever I was getting back into it, I was thinking, like, am I too late getting into this? And then you sort of look at the local comedians, and yes, there are younger guys, but it also takes years to get good at these things. So my sort of thought process is that if I stop now, I'm probably gonna still want to do it in the future. But if I stop, I'm gonna be terrible in the future, and it's just gonna be starting again. So I don't think you're ever too old. I think you do have to just keep plugging away at these things, and
I think I will try some stand up.
do, 100%. I would love to see you do it as a well, maybe as yourself, but also as a character, because I think the characters that you come up with are fantastic, and they should be used on stage for a paying audience.
Might just book a tour.
Do, and I will throw suggestions at you, and we can just improv the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I could. I'd be more comfortable taking a suggestion and just making stuff up as I went along.
I just riffing it.
Yeah, I reckon. I reckon I could, if I could learn how to sort of get myself in the mood, just like that. I reckon I could do that. And it'd probably be easier than actually planning a routine
Yeah.
and
No.
learning to say it as if it's new, which is obviously one of the skillful things a lot of good stand-ups do is it doesn't sound like they've done it 50 times before.
Yeah, you have to pretend that it's the first time telling the joke and that you believe it, sort of thing. No?
As we said earlier, like with my Arnold Schwarzenegger acting ability, I might be able to pull off that sort of fake novelness.
Or yeah, Arnold Schwarzenegger is just not. I was talking about this in work recently. Like, he's just not a good actor.
No, his sort of natural ways suit certain roles. I think he did suit the sort of robotness of the Terminator.
because his acting is just so rigid, basically, like a robot.
And he's got that face. He's like, I really believe he's the only like bodybuilder who's ever sort of suited the body. Everyone else kind of looks like some sort of like terrified child has been sort of like tortured and experimented. Yeah. But like, whereas Arnold just kind of looks like, because he's got that strong jawline.
Yeah, no, it fits. You're right. And so see with bodybuilders,
how can that possibly fit anyone? Because that's the most unnatural shit ever.
Oh, it is. But it's the thing with bodybuilders as well. Like, it looks like whenever you see their torso and then their legs, it literally looks like someone has just like screwed their torso onto their legs. If you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't look like it's real. It looks like someone has just set it in place. Like, you're bringing it back to the plastic torso behind you, or the plastic crotch.
Yeah,
that is more real looking than some bodybuilders.
It is.
And we'll leave it there. Like so that. we did a full circle from plastic crotches to plastic crotches. Yeah, and that's probably going to be the name of the podcast. Plastic Crotches with Robert Vaughan. We'll figure it out. But thank you so much, Rob, for coming on. I'm going to say goodbye and we'll have a chat afterwards. But we'll do the awkward, sort of weird goodbye thing and then we'll go.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, bye, bye,
I've
bye,
got
bye,
to
bye.
look back now, haven't I? Bye.
Bye,
I'll
bye.
see you later.
Say good,
On the
goodbye,
beach.
goodbye, bye, bye, bye now. Bye.
Bye.